Type of 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. Just as a man discards worn-out garments and puts on new ones, the embodied self casts off worn-out bodies and enters into others that are new. Weapons cannot cut the self. Fire cannot burn it. Water cannot make it wet. Nor can wind dry it. To karma only you have the right, not to its rewards. Do not let the rewards be your goal, nor attach yourself to inaction. When a man casts away all mundane desires and finds divine bliss within his self, then he is said to be one of steady wisdom. A man thinking of sensual objects forms attachment for them. From attachment, craving for them, and from craving, anger arises. From anger results delusion, and from delusion, loss of memory. From loss of memory comes loss of reason, and loss of reason leads to destruction. One's own dharma, though imperfectly performed, is preferable to the well-performed duties of others. Death is one's own duty in life. The duty of another is fraught with fear. Krishna Das, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Sri Krishna, for that.
Yes,
dialogue.
Since we planned this interview, I have been marinate. I mean, I not as disciplined as I'd like to be, but I'm not. Are you hip to this record, Song of God, Bhagavad Gita? It's Ashish Khan with narration from Ravi Shankar.
Oh, really? I don't know that. No.
I'm gonna have to hit. I mean, and so the whole thing is about. Well, the whole thing is about basically Arjuna, asking Krishna Das, asking Krishna how he is supposed to, they're about to go through a civil war, and how he is supposed to fight his brothers and go into this thing and do it. And I'm still not completely clear on the whole thing, but that was the first 10 verses to the song Shri Krishna. And, Krishna Das, I just wanted to ask you how happy you are right now in your life.
Well, I'm about as happy as Arjuna was looking out at the battlefield.
Oh my! That's what I feel like. That's exactly how it feels.
Family,
Yeah. I guess maybe the better question is this: you can go any way you want on it, but when you are staring at constant division, constant splitting, constant separation, instead of embracing it, and you're seeing the carnage and sort of it just doesn't seem like it will end. How do you stay? I mean, aside from your yogic practices, what would be your advice to people that are struggling in this time of war?
Well, that's a very good question. Once you've been doing as human beings, when we're at ease within ourselves to some degree, what happens is our hearts respond to these horrific situations with compassion. It's quite surprising, actually, because we're not trained like that growing up in this culture. But what I mean is that I remember when, back in the good old days, when George W. was president.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, we used to think he was.
Yeah, no, it was those are the good days, man.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
So, I was watching CNN one day, and they were showing him. It was live footage of him coming down to a school in Florida, a public school, and the wives of the first soldiers who had been killed in Iraq were gathered in a classroom waiting for him to visit. And he was walking down the hall full of himself. Hi, Joe. Hi, Frank. Yeah, I'm the president. I'm walking down the hall, strutting down the hall. And I was just about to switch the channel. And he walked into the room, the camera's following him, where these women were sitting, waiting for him. And he took one look at them, and he burst out crying like a baby. Like a baby, weeping. It really pissed me off because I couldn't hate him anymore. It just broke my heart, and I saw so many things happen in my head at once. First of all, I saw this poor bastard creating all this viciousness and hatred and violence in the world, all at the mercy of his backers and supporters and all the deals he had to make to become the big president, what he had to sell of himself to buy that position, and sending these people off to be killed in Iraq. The karmas that he's created for himself are so horrific. He will suffer so terribly from those karmas. But seeing him standing there weeping, I didn't want him to suffer. I didn't want him to suffer. I didn't want those women to suffer. I didn't want their husbands to suffer. It was just, and it was surprising to me that it was so powerful a feeling for me. But when we look out at what's going on in the world these days, we see people who really want to help. They want to help. They want to conquer racism. They want to eliminate it from the world and this country. They want people to be treated with kindness and respect. But at the same time, you can't help but notice that the anger and the violence coming from the hurt and pain that they have, you can't help but realize that probably that's going to, at very least, limit what they can accomplish, what can be accomplished. And that's what Krishna says in the Gita. You can own your karma, you can own your actions. That's what you can control, what you do. But we don't have control over the fruits of our actions or the results of our actions. So you only wish that people would find a better way to do this so that they can accomplish what we can accomplish, what we really want to accomplish. But we don't, but most people don't. So, but it's a vicious cycle because the anger comes from fear. The fear comes from the racism and the treatment that people have had. And so their natural reaction is going to be fear and then anger, and then what does that create? So that's why it's so difficult to really accomplish peace in the world, because peace has to come from love. Only love can conquer hatred. And until we really recognize that we're all dependent on each other for every breath we take, people will not be able to feel that kind of acceptance of other people as their brothers and sisters and cohabitants on this planet. And so they will keep creating more suffering.
I'm glad you used that term. There's no right or wrong answer, but I've done 2,000 interviews in the last 9 years with a whole cross-section of humanity, from Krishna Das to Bill Cosby before the world caved in on him, to Zakir Hussein, to Ayrton, to spiritual people from all over the world. And Krishna Das, it's a term that has been stapled into our brains. But I will say, and then I'll let you riff on this because I'd like to be enlightened if possible. I don't believe in racism. I believe we are all one human race. What I believe, though, is that in all parts of the world, in all cultures and civilizations, there's cultural bias that builds up within those communities. Babies that are born are not born to hate people that have a different skin color than them, or worship a different God than them, or look a different way. They are taught that. They are taught the terminology. They are taught the significance of a flag. They are taught this stuff. So it has more to do with, I feel that when we continue to say racism, it is separating people by race. But we are one human race. Can you just, can you riff on that? Because I'm not trying to say there isn't, I know we also are not taught history, and that's another subject, but what really went down in history. But I've just done enough to know, I've done enough history to know, I've just done enough woodshedding to know that we are one. You just said it. We have to be one. We are all, if we don't realize the significance of the interconnectivity, then we will never know peace in the world.
That's absolutely right, You know, my guru used to say, the same blood runs through all our veins. We all have the same, we come from the same parents, ultimately, whatever their names were. And we're totally dependent on each other to continue existence. And in fact, no one, in Buddhism, there's a concept called interdependence, which means that we are all of us are dependent on everyone else in order to maintain our lives and to maintain the planet and our lives and our environment. And we're all taught. We're programmed. These are programs that are running, that are instilled in us. And look what the English did, I don't even know where it started. I wonder where it did start, where this color consciousness started, and white people thinking they're superior to everybody else. Actually, white people seem to be a cancer that's intent on destroying the world.
I think it started at the shores of, the bottom line is that, it started before this, but at least in this country, when diaspora occurred and those slaves came here to the North America, because Christians said, well, because your skin is a different color, you're subhuman. Okay, yeah. and they stripped them of their Yoruba, spiritual religions, and the drum, which they let slaves in Cuba and the Caribbean keep the drum, but in North America they were so threatened by it that they would cut somebody's hands off if they found in a public square. So they stripped them of their entire lineage and forced them. That's the other thing people talk about, like looting and stuff, and I don't condone it, but we looted Africa. They didn't want to come here to begin with. It's like, it's not funny. They bring so much essence, vibe, and love, and I'm talking about all people of different skin color. It's just, and I guess my question for you is, you were funny in the last interview. We talked about Swaha, and you talked about, you're like in America we call it barbecues. We are based on this sort of pedagogy of white Anglo truth and history, and because I've reached out and just tried to connect with all of humanity, and I also just personally have friends that are different from me. I wonder how diverse your social circle is not even the crowds that show up or the people that show up for your concerts, but I think most of the fear comes from the fact that most people just hang out with people that look like them. And when they don't have real deep relationships with people that are different skin color than them, they fear them, and that fear turns to hate, and then that hatred turns to complete terror.
Yeah.
And so how do you, sometimes I just say, it's important for people to have a social circle or go out and connect with people. Do you have a diverse circle, and have you had that for a long time?
Well, it depends kind of how you define people of color.
Yeah.
I have my closest people in the world. Sorry, there's no way I can turn off my message thing.
I'm hearing nothing, so it's fine. Go ahead.
My whole life is spent in India with people of dark skin. That's my home. The home of my heart is India, and my closest circle is filled with Indian people and people of color and all colors, Asians and everyone's included. I'm in a position where so many people come to me from all different cultures and all different backgrounds and all different social families. And one of the reasons I don't really comment much on politics and social stuff is that what I try to offer people is a spiritual practice that can help each individual find a deeper way to live in their own heart, to find a better way to get through the day, and to find a way of becoming a good human being. And that part of it is an internal processing. And that's what I want. That's what I've been given from India and my guru and my teachers. And that's what I have to share with people. And my belief is that when people do these practices, when people do become aware of what's possible in life, they will become better human beings. They will treat people better. They will treat themselves better. And they will look for justice in the world. And everybody's doing what they can to help in their way. And this is what I do. So everything is open to everyone. There's no one excluded.
Do you believe that you said human beings, like the Arabian, but I often wonder, and I've heard from some of the black musicians that I've interviewed, that we are human animals, not human beings. Some of us are just more evolved. Do you believe...
On the physical plane, we're animals. Yeah.
Yes, and you're seeing some of that. I guess maybe the better question is, and there is an imbalance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine in society. This is a patriarchal society. It's still dominated by relatively white-skinned males. And I just wanted you to talk about, I know we are both the masculine and feminine, but for men out there who are searching, trying to get out of their mind, trying to drop to their primordial gut, what are the attributes of the divine masculine that need to come to the forefront in order to get closer to peace?
Well, when I lived in India, I met so many great male saints who were full of kindness and compassion and inner strength to overcome negative emotions, negative programming, cultural biases, and actually experience the oneness of all beings. Those are the people I hung out with. So that's a very specialized area, so to speak. You don't get that everywhere because people are programmed by their culture that men shouldn't feel, men should be like this. It's crazy stuff, There's so much fear out there.
It is, yeah.
Crazy stuff. How long can you fuck? That makes you a man. People timing themselves.
Right.
How many
Performance
people have you fucked,
based. It's performance based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's like, really? What? Who cares? I mean, but people do care, and people are very involved, and there's in that kind of thinking, and our culture really rewards people, for being aggressive and nasty and overcoming, conquering all, that it's really, it's like, what is that, But it's everywhere. There's parts of that in every culture. But, in the East, the divine masculine and feminine are not separate.
That's right.
They're two sides of one coin. Without either side, you don't have a coin. It's like a fire and heat. You can't have one without the other. It's the way it is. So it's just in terms of what the cultures do to people to make them feel a certain way about themselves, And it all comes down to us not knowing who we are. It all comes down to us not experiencing the deeper reality within each being. If we could see our true nature, if we could see the soul, experience the soul, so to speak, then we would have no problem. Our vision would be clear. We would see through the lies that culture tells us about what it means to be this or what it means to be that. We're already perfect inside. Everyone is. Everyone has that divine spark of the same light that's in everyone. And it's just, you can see what this world does to people, and all beings, animals too. We destroy.
That's right.
And we use it to feed our base desires. And of course, this time, they say, is the Dark Ages. This is called the Kali Yuga, as far as the East is concerned. They describe this era that we're in, as the Dark Ages, and that there's a big cycle. There's 4 different ages, and it starts off as if the sun's at the height. Everything is clear and beautiful and pure, and there's love everywhere. Everyone sees reality. Everyone is at ease within themselves and knows God, so to speak. And then the sun starts to set, and each age that comes, the sun is lower and lower in the sky, and so our vision is affected. How we see things is affected. What we see. We see only shadows now, whereas in the first age, the pure age, when the sun is at the height, we see clearly. Now it's all darkness and shadows. That means negativity, and it's endemic to what's going on in the world. That everybody lives in this wavelength of fear and shame and guilt and anger and selfishness. And so, but even now, it is possible to overcome all that programming and find reality, experience reality. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And I've met people in my life, who actually triumphed over all the programming and experienced ultimate reality, experienced God. They experienced the universe. They were liberated from suffering. And they saw all beings as a part of themselves, as a part of the great self which we all are part of. But we are stuck on a very superficial sense input level. And we don't see anything else except the information that the senses gather for our awareness. We don't see the consciousness within. We only see the objects that the senses pick up. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. But we don't experience who or what is seeing those things. And who or what is seeing those things is who we really are. And that's the same in every being in the universe. No different.
Can you talk?
And it's been called... Yeah, sorry.
No,
It's been called God, it's been called the Self, it's been called the One, it's been called Buddha Nature, it's been called Christ, it's been called anything. All these names are the names of that place.
Exactly. And you mentioned it last time, and you just mentioned it now. I just was hoping you could specifically talk about one, a saintly human that in Tibet, Southeast Asia, or India, that outside of Maharaji, that exuded that sense of complete love and peace.
Well, for me, Maharaji was my gateway drug, you know.
Absolutely.
No, he's the one in whom I saw all these qualities and recognized this special but innate kind of love. And that kind of locked me in to understanding something and experience something. And then you see it in many places, many places. Many saints I met in India definitely had some of that. I've met many Tibetan lamas that are just so extraordinary. I've met Sufi saints that are so extraordinary. I've met Christian saints that are so amazing, but not so directly, but I've read about Thomas Merton and the things he experienced, and some of the older saints in the Russian Orthodox Church, things like that. You read these things and you're just not, really? I can't believe that this happened, And then there's the Baal Shem Tov in Judaism. No different than any Siddha, any enlightened being in any other religion that I've ever read about. It's mind-boggling. But why shouldn't it be? Every path leads to the same place, which lives within us as our true nature. Every spiritual path leads that way, and religion is just the grossest version of spirituality.
What was it? I mean, just for the lay person that is listening or will hear this later or long after we've left this earth, what were the intangibles that inspired you about these lamas or these Sufis specifically?
Sweetness and joy. That was unshakable. Unshakable by anything that happened or was happening in the outside world. Unshakable strength of goodness and love. I mean, everybody knows what that is. And everybody's searching for that. But we all have one problem, which is bad aim.
Yeah, you told me, yeah. But these people, I mean,
That's
you witnessed people that even in, I mean, where they would not, this idea of simplicity, gratitude, peace, open heart, under any strife or disturbance or break of tranquility, no matter what, they were just always on that frequency.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Totally human, though, not
Fake.
divine
Yeah.
and far away and totally funky and right here. But listen, one time someone asked the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if he was happy, and he just said, "Well, I guess you could say I've had a very hard life. I was recognized at 2 years old as a reincarnation of the previous Dalai Lama. I was taken to the monastery and I was trained, and I didn't see my parents that much, and then I had to take over the reins of my country as a teenager and negotiate with the Chinese while they were planning to invade, and then they invaded. I had to escape and watch as millions of my people were murdered and slaughtered." And he said, "The Chinese have taken everything from me. Am I going to let them take my happiness?" That's real strength. Regardless of what happens, how horrible in the outside world, you still have equanimity. And that's what really allows you to be involved. If that horrific stuff crushes our hearts and makes us hide in a corner, what good can we do for the world? But you develop this incredible inner strength that will not allow your heart to close, and that will not crush your heart at the same time. So you can be present with things. You can really act in the world in the best way possible. This is the goal for all of us, to be strong enough and open enough to meet each moment fully, to have all our abilities available to us at every moment for us to help everyone or anyone who needs help. That's what we can do for other people. To give comfort, to give help, to bring a sense of okayness to life, even though it's difficult. For instance, people in the West, well, not people just in the West, but most people live like they're going to live as if they're going to live forever.
Right.
Their parents die, their friends die, they're bummed out for a while, but then they forget. And they keep on living like they're going to live forever, like death is never going to come to get them. And as a result, you're really living in denial of reality, and you're living in fear, even if it's not conscious. So you're grabbing more stuff, as much stuff as you can, so you can have some pleasure, and then you have to protect that stuff from other people so they don't take your pleasure away. And then you're pushing pain away and suffering away, trying to hide and going through your life like you're in a dream and never paying attention to what's really happening. This is how most people live. And it's heartbreaking, because we're headed down the river to the waterfall, and we think the bank of the river is moving and that we're still. And every second we're getting closer to that waterfall. And because we're not able to deal with that, where we find equanimity, where we find compassion and kindness and real love. But if we're just streaming down towards the waterfall and not paying attention, what are our chances? What are our chances of ever finding out reality, finding ourselves?
Krishna Das, it's been a couple years since we talked, but we have a game on this program called Name That Voice, and I want to put this in. I want to put this in for you now. Take a listen to the story, and then we'll come back.
I'll try. I'm not good at games.
Don't worry about I'm more interested in the content, so don't worry about the game.
Okay.
By the time I came out of the LSD period, and I figured out what I had to do, which was basically start yoga and meditating and just change my life around, and which I did. And so I started that about a year before I came to New York. And by the time I got to New York, New York is a very intense city. And so I kind of like doubled down on my yoga. I started to go to see a lot of different spiritual masters. Basically, once you open the Pandora's box of trying to figure out who you are, self-knowledge, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment, it's a very hard box to close. And I didn't want to. In the end, after doing yoga, which I continued for many years, the yoga of Master Vishnu Devananda, and I would go to the Sufis. The Sufis, for those who don't know, is the more mystical side of Islam, and very, very beautiful side of Islam. Unfortunately, we don't hear much about it. We only hear about the bad side of Islam, but there are bad people everywhere. It's
right.
Nothing to
That's
do
right.
with religion.
That's right.
And I used to run into Paul Motion there, who's the drummer with Bill Evans.
Oh my God.
Who was also a follower of the Sufi way. The Sufi way is very much like yoga, one of the bhakti yoga ways. In any event, after seeing a lot of these masters, well, not a lot, but quite a few, I ended up wanting to be a disciple of Sri Chinmoy. This would be probably now in late 1970. And so I needed a discipline. I've always believed discipline is really the road to freedom. And I still am convinced of that today. It's certainly true in music, but I actually believe it's true in life, too. And so I began quite a rigorous discipline of meditation and yogic practices. And at some point, probably about a year after I became a disciple of Sri Chinmoy, things were going very well. I'd already, Mahavishnu Orchestra was running. We were enjoying just phenomenal success. Not just musically, but commercially, too. This was the biggest surprise of all. And one day, my Guruji, he said, so, Mahavishnu, the disciples need to eat a good meal and cheap. So why don't you open a restaurant? so that's what I did, and it was in Queens, and that's why I learned to cook Indian food. Not very well, but I got better as time.
I cannot wait to have. Wait, hold on for a second. Did you?
I still love to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, it was. I had to make basically a good meal for $1.50, and even in 1972, that's a tough call. And basically, so I was just losing money every month, but it was what I considered part of my divine duties, for want of another word, and I was very happy that it helped people who didn't have much money to come and eat very cheap and good food, vegetarian. In any event, I kept it going for about 2 years, and but it got heavy for me in the sense that I really couldn't take care of it. I was touring all the time, and so I had to allocate responsibility to different people, and in the end, after a couple of years, I said to my guru, I said, Guruji, I'm really having a problem with this, And he said, well, it's okay. He said, you've learned enough, I think, from that experience. And so I gave it away, actually, the restaurant. I gave it to a couple of the girl disciples.
All right, Krishna Das, you want to take a guess at who that is?
God?
Okay. He's a guy that I see in line with you in terms of your path. That was my fourth interview with Mahavishnu John McLaughlin. And
oh, really? How wonderful.
And yeah, and I did that in 2018, and I thought of you. I mean, just to set the, because he's got kind of a mutt accent. You don't exactly, sometimes it's hard to hear what he's saying, but I mean, basically, Tony Williams invited him to the United States, and within one day of being here, he was on Kind of Blue, but yet he was still using hard drugs, and he doesn't, not LSD or pot, but coke, maybe heroin, who knows, and he was searching for a way to access or be a conduit for spiritual music without using hard drugs. So he found Sri Chinmoy and started living in the ashram. Well, at the same time, him and Billy Cobham started shedding, just the two of them, down at a place called Baggies on the Lower West Side for weeks, and working out rhythms, odd metered rhythms, breathing. Now, John was already doing yoga, but Billy told me this. And that was the birth of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So they get a record deal with Columbia, and Sri basically says, Mahavishnu, they're having commercial success, they're touring, they're getting popular, and I don't think they necessarily expected that. So they're getting into this sort of realm of popularity or superficiality, or I guess more to the point, like going down the river, the analogy you used to the waterfall, essentially potentially getting to that place. And he said, Mahavishnu, the disciples need to eat. Please open a restaurant and cook food for them. So, I mean, he's going on the road with Mahavishnu, and he's helping his people. He's helping the disciples who don't have a lot of money. He learned how to cook, and basically it was a recognition of saying, can you keep both feet on the ground? Can you still be a human being, as Krishna Das says? And it struck me that it was the same message, similarly, when you first got the bolt of electricity, the flash of, if you do not sing, you will not clear out the dark corners of your heart. That was in 94. Then you recognized, you were horrified because of all the hungry man needs to eat, you said, and all in all forms. And you were going to be, people liked you, they were gravitating to you, and you were horrified because you couldn't handle it. And you went back to India and you begged for mercy. You basically said, this is my problem, Maharaji, you need to fix it. I can't do anything about it. If you want me to sing, I need help. Because you were doing it to keep both feet on the ground, if that may be the wrong word to use. And I wonder,
I know what you mean.
When I listen to Mahavishnu, he's a good friend, I listen to you, and I almost hear you saying to me some of these, they're so simple. I mean, some of this stuff about dropping to the primordial gut and figuring out what your path is and the sanctity and the purity, it's so easy, but yet it's about sacrifice in some ways. It's about not just surrender, it's about doing it. What are your intentions? What are your intentions? And I wonder if you feel that one of the reasons people go on a lot, there's many people that go on spiritual missions. I mean, you're not alone. Everyone kind of does it in their own way, but sacrifice. How much of authenticity in your life has to do with the fact that you sacrificed?
I never thought of it like that.
You know what I'm saying? You could have become a boutique. You could have become a boutique guy. You could have become a boutique teacher and been a mega star. And you were like, no, this is not. You knew intrinsically it was not right. Mahavishnu could have said, come on, Shri, I'm just getting to be a rock star. Let me go on my tour. There's a sanctity to it. I don't know what the right word is, but I just wonder if enough. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that it was a no-brainer. I didn't feel I was leaving anything behind of any value. I was going for the love that I had just discovered, was real and that was in the world, that you could find it. And that was life-changing for me. I never looked back. I just moved. I just went right in that direction. I didn't feel it as, I mean, you could say it was a sacrifice, but it didn't feel like that. It just felt like, yeah, right on, here I go. This is what I want. I want this love. I need this. So even though I'd been offered to be the singer in this band that became famous later, it didn't mean anything to me because it was black. It was just shadows next to this love, which was Technicolor. It was the whole thing. I love what he said there. Where is he from that he came to New York?
His dad was an ambassador or some government official in England. He was part of the and he was a studio shark in England and played a lot of gentlemen's clubs with. I just loved the fact that he was searching around the same time that you were, and just the idea that just at a musical level, the idea that if anybody is not aware of Mahavishnu Orchestra, I mean, I've talked to people, that opened for them, really great studio musicians, and they said that, and maybe you were at some of these concerts for all I know, but I mean, John was in his white attire, and he would ask the entire gymnasium to go down to a hush, completely down. Maybe there was only an air conditioner that you could hear. One time he heard somebody in the crowd yelling, "I'm peaking!" But, for the most part, everybody was down to a complete hush. And then Billy would start drumming, and it would come up, and it would explode it was just so spiritual. And he was, what you talked about before is just sort of seeing, that music was incredibly powerful. And so he had obviously tapped into a divine frequency. I wonder about, I guess for my question for you is, Krishna Das, you don't do, kirtan and chanting, rhythmically, there can be a lot of improvisation, but you can't stretch a lot on the harmonium. And I just wanted to know,
I can't stretch at all.
I know. You got the vocalese, man. The voice. It's all the voice, man. I'm telling you, the doo-woppers changed everything, man. But But when, what were your intentions for getting into music?
Well, early on, when I was a kid, it was the blues. I just related to that darkness and those shadows and that longing. That's how I went through my teenage years with the blues. Then it got into folk music and then rock and roll. But when I got to India, and I heard chanting, just a group of people, village people, people in a temple singing, it just totally destroyed me. I just could not believe it, because their hearts were in it, their souls were in it. I didn't know what it was really, but I just said, whatever this is, I want this. This is for me. I could do this. This speaks to me. This calls me. I need this. And so I just immersed myself in whatever. Whenever I heard chanting going on, I was right there. And it was for me, it wasn't so much about the musical side of it as it was a connecting side of it to something deeper.
You don't feel the blues was as authentic as that? And so, did you were you going to see some of these guys like
sure.
Brownie McGee, Sonny Terry, and Brown? I'm just saying, the sweat was. Art Blakey.
All the time.
I'd say that's what I want to know. But I want to know where Krishna Das was going. Were you going to the black jazz clubs in New York? Slugs and stuff.
Not so much the black jazz clubs, but down in the village when the blues was rediscovered. Skip James, Mississippi John Hurt, Reverend Garrett Davis. That was where I connected.
I knew it. I
were
just
my
have visions
gods.
of Krishna Das with a banjo
Oh, my
and
God.
playing Gary Davis tunes,
And then I wanted to be John Hammond Jr. I mean, when I heard him sing, I went,
Wow.
that's who
Wow.
I want to be. I'm a white guy, but I want to be. I want that. That's it. So I used to sing his stuff, and I wanted to be him. But then I met Ram Dass, and when I met Ram Dass, everything changed for me, because I recognized that whatever it was I was looking for in those situations, in that music even, I wasn't going to find it in that music, and I wasn't going to find it. I had to find it in a different way. And when I met Ram Dass, that's when I tripped and fell into my path. And the chanting came later. The chanting came as a way of deepening the love that I had discovered, or the love that had discovered me, really. And it became my practice to keep me connected to that deeper reality. And, if music was enough by itself, then every musician, even the greatest musicians, every musician would be happy and enlightened. But it's not enough by itself.
Right.
It brings us great pleasure. It calms the heart and the mind and the soul. It calms us down. It helps us enter these beautiful states of beauty and sweetness and all kinds of things. But it does not destroy the habits and the negative programming that we have hidden in our own hearts. It does not destroy that. But when you mix music with meditation, or if you bring the motivation to free oneself of the dirt on the mirror of one's heart, then the music becomes an active participant in freeing us from suffering. But alone, it is not enough to give us real love. That doesn't come and go. It can generate beautiful experiences, but we don't change. In fact, we get addicted to those experiences, and it makes living in this world much more difficult, which is why so many musicians, great creative artists, get addicted to drugs, because we can't deal with this shit. We want to be gone, but music will not keep us gone. If we want to get gone, we have to go beyond the beyond. Gone beyond the beyond.
Gone beyond. There's a gone. That's right.
Gate parasamgati bodhi swaha. I mean, gone beyond the beyond. Bodhi, enlightened mind, swaha, offered to everything, dissolved into the universe. So that's why music is a spiritual practice for me, mixed together with the repetition of what in India what they call the divine name, the names of God, the names of that place within us that is divine. And so with the repetition of the name mixed with the music, it's very powerful.
Got a lot of nice synergy going here, and I'm pretty prolific on new media, trying to connect humanity and driving content that hopefully inspires people to be themselves. And I just became friends with a divine being, and but I think she's a little bit like, where did this guy come from? Because he's in the intergalactic, like he's gone. And I wanted you to, the floor is yours. Dasima, Ram Dass's wife. Can you talk about her?
She's not his wife. Is a friend.
Okay,
she
yeah.
was
I don't know why I thought that was a
caretaker.
caretaker. Can you talk about her?
Dashima is a wonderful person, wonderful, great. She did such service around that. She really kept him alive for all these years. She ran the house. She took care of him. She took care of his medicines, and she organized everything. And really, the fact that he was able to remain so long with us before he finally passed last December was really due to her dedication and her inner strength. Yeah, she's a wonderful person.
You know, this is touching my heart here. I just want to read you this, and then I'll tell you who it's from. And it just sort of speaks to what we've been talking about. This is, so I'll tell you who it is after. He said, I had been seeking for years since I first started playing string bass in 1962. Why was I playing music? What was the reason for it? It wasn't enough for me just to have fun and enjoy it. I wanted to know why I was playing. What prefaced that was there a God that created us all? I started reading different books, talking to people to find out if there really was a God. I became confused by man's opinions. I became confused by the vanity and egos and intellectualism, what we do to try to puff ourselves up and make ourselves important in life. I just started praying, and I said, if there really is a God, reveal yourself to me and make yourself known. I can't deal with the intellectualism. Everything's becoming too perfect and precise. If you're there, reveal yourself to me. Slowly but surely, the Lord, which can be any deity, started revealing and making things clear to me. On this path, part of the process was discovering why I was playing music. I thought, if there's a God, then that God created music. If there's a God, then God created me and put the desire in me to play music. He gave me the love for music. I did it on my own. I didn't want to belong to a group or be under the religiosity and traditions of the church. There was a coffee house I had in Portland, Oregon. Prior to that, I had been living on a farm in Woodland, Washington. I drove a tractor for a year and planted seeds to raise hay that we used to feed the cattle with. I was driving the tractor one day, and this plan for a puppet show popped into my head. I went down to the lumber yard and bought all the things I thought I needed. When I finished making this puppet house, I had a 6-inch piece of 2x4 left. I had gotten just the right amount of wood. It was actually a puppet house you could stand up in. It had a fold-in roof, and it was painted purple and yellow. It was made for kids. When I finished it, my wife said, "What are you going to do with this?" I said, "I don't know. I guess I'll put it in the barn. I have no use for it." I put it in the barn, and a couple years later, I'm hunting for a place to open a coffee house like the Longolin in Seattle. There was a lawyer in town who owned this place that was full of junk. He said, "If you clean this out, I'll give it to you rent-free. You can go to my lumber yard and charge whatever you want to fix it up." I got a junker to come and clean the whole place out, and as a reward, I gave him 2 or 3 antique oak tables that were in the place. I spent a year tearing down a wall and putting up a ceiling. When I had the stage finally built, I thought, I'll have puppet shows for the kids on Saturday afternoons. When I brought the puppet house in and put it on the stage, it fit perfectly. It was 6 inches shy of hitting the top of the ceiling. I thought, that's why I built the puppet house. I had these shows for the kids, and behind the dialogue, I'd have Coltrane or Miles playing underneath it, so there was always jazz playing. I'd have my group playing in there on Friday nights. We'd start about 1 in the morning. It was isolated, didn't disturb the neighbors. Charlie Hayden, Ralph Towner, different people when they were in town would come through. And when I finally went on the road with Joe Henderson, I had to give it up because I was traveling a lot. In the coffee house, I would plan my puppet shows for the following Friday. One day, I was in the midst of writing the script, and all of a sudden I saw this vision. It wasn't a vision where everything outside of me changed. It was a vision inside, but it was very real. I saw this color pool. I saw this beautiful pool filled with all these colors. It's difficult to describe the colors because they were spiritual colors. They weren't reds, yellows, blues like we see here on earth. I saw the Lord dip in a ladle and let these colors flow out. I said to the Lord, "What is this?" He said, "This is a color pool that I have given you to fill the note." The Lord went on to tell me to fill the musical note with substance. Quoting the Lord, "The substance is my love, and I want you to go forth and show the glory of the kingdom of God, not for your power and from your power, but from my glory and my power." It took all the glory away from me. I couldn't say, okay, this is me, I'm doing it, I'm great. I had to give that part up. I couldn't follow that path, and that was my purpose. I found my purpose playing music, and once I found my purpose, I was able to move forward in a confident way because my faith in the Lord became strong at that point. It really was like walking on water. I had a wife at this point, 4 kids. My wife was homeschooling, so I was supporting my family playing jazz acoustic bass. I wasn't playing electric bass. I wasn't playing any gigs other than jazz. That's all I was doing. That is from my interview with a guy you may or may not have come across, David Friesen. Do you know that cat?
David Friesen?
He's a dear friend of Mark Egan's. I know he's a collaborator of yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You ask Egan about. Friesen is operating on a Krishna. To me, so and I mean Egan, they're very close. But Friesen, this is my question for you, Krishna Das, is he was taking this insecure path of jazz was no longer a popular music. The electric bass was a great way to get disco gigs, R&B gigs, country gigs, whatever, to make money. And he's saying, all I care about is playing the spiritual music. Why was I chosen to do this? And he talks about this ladle and these inner spiritual colors. And so my question is, before you met Maharaji, did you actually, did you ever connect with him prior to that in some kind of way on the inside where at least maybe you ignored it. Maybe you were consumed with things or you were numbing yourself, but did you have interaction with him prior to going to India, spiritually?
Well, when I met Ram Dass for the first time, after that, I had dreams of Maharaji, and I had many experiences with him before I went to India, but not before I met Ram Dass. But I was in so much pain in those days, emotional pain, that I was just trying to live through it. I couldn't. I was lonely. I was depressed. I was unhappy. I just really was just trying to get through the day. But I had been going to see any teachers, any yogis that were around. I went to visit, but nothing spoke to me, until after I met Ram Dass. After that, I definitely was. Something changed in me. Something contacted me deeply from that point on. That was beautiful, by the way, that Dave Friesen, wonderful. That I love. Really love
I'm going to send you the audio because the way he tells the story is the way you tell a story, and he is he was so consumed with this was what was so inspiring, because I think that's what you in some ways were conflicted by, was being a spiritual person and an artist, musician. It's just the idea that the vanity, that man's view of God, right? It's like the vanity of it. It for somebody who is spiritual, it's so off-putting. And here he is, on a farm, just he's he's looking for signs. Larry Brilliant said the same thing. He looked for a sign. He asked for a sign at the Eutrophic Lake, and he was, and there was nothing until he actually, until he met Maharaji. But you're saying can you talk about the first time? I remember Wavy telling me that he kept hearing about this guy Richard Alpert, and he knew him back in the days of the April experiment in those times, and he was hearing about this guy who had a big aura, and he was very doubtful, very dubious of people like that. And then I guess he was, I think he was in a psychedelic state, but he saw Ram Dass, and it was a nonverbal, instant, authentic connection. And I don't want to give credence to the fact that you need to be tripping out, in order to see somebody's aura, but it would, Wavy quickly recognized the frequency that Ram Dass was on, and could you talk about, being that you went to see other yogic people and nothing spoke to you, but was it just simplicity with him? Can you paint the picture the first time you actually met him?
Well, the first time I met Maharaji was when I met Ram Dass. I walked into
you met him both.
where Ram Dass was. Well, no, this Maharaji was in India, and this was in New Hampshire before I went to India. When I walked into the room where Ram Dass was sitting, immediately, without words, without eye contact, without anything, I walked into that room, and all of a sudden I knew that whatever it was I was looking for was real, and it was in the world, and one could find it. It was like all the lights just went on, and it was like, oh. And then after that, I started having dreams of Maharaji, which was unusual because Ram Dass had just shown us this little black and white picture of him, or a couple of little black and white pictures. But I had these incredible dreams of him, where he was walking and moving, and it was funny. So then I traveled around with Ram Dass for about a year and a half, and then I went to India. Close to 2 years. Then I went to India, and after being in India over a year, whenever we used to meet Maharaji, we would come into a room where he was sitting. And so one day, I was late to the temple. I forget why. We were staying in a town nearby, and for some reason I came late that day. And as I walked into the temple, I walked into the courtyard, and Maharaji was walking across the courtyard by himself. And I just stopped, and my mind went out to lunch because I had never seen him walk before, right?
Oh, man.
But I had had a dream back in America 3 years before or 2 years before, in the dream he walked. I saw him walking. And he was walking across that courtyard the same way he walked in that dream. He had a very unique walk, like a baby, kind of bouncing from one leg to the other, as it was kind of looking like it could fall at any moment. Bong, bong, bong.
Exactly.
And I just stopped, and my mind went out, and I had brought these apples to offer him, and I wound up like standing in front of him with my jaw hanging down. And he just looked at me and laughed and grabbed the apples and threw them to other people nearby. And he kind of like touched his head and went, "Oh, these Westerners, they drive me crazy." And he laughed and he went to his room.
Why don't they just sit in it? It's totally real. It's like, for the year and a half that you traveled with Ram Dass, what was the essence, vibe, and aura, or maybe the better part? You made this really revelatory thing to me. You're like, karma is not fate, and it's. I'm just wondering about. Let me get the exact quote up here because you were much more articulate than
I am today.
No. You're much more articulate than I am being. There's a law, of course, and you said here, if you start to accept that, right, I can't say I had one great experience where everything opened up and became clear to me, where like I saw my previous birth, so that never happened to me. When you live in a foreign country long enough, you start to, quote unquote, speak the language a little bit, and that's kind of what happened. If you accept certain things, it leads you to accept other things. If you start to accept that with anger, comes more anger, and from greed comes more greed, and from shame comes more shame. Then you accept letting go of those things, comes a lighter, deeper existence. And then you see there is a cause and effect to things, that there is a law of cause and effect, and that is called karma. Karma is not fate, and that's the misunderstanding. It's actually choice. It's openness. Do you feel like you cultivated that in the year and a half with Ram Dass before you went to India to meet Maharaji?
In that time with Ram Dass, after I first met him and while we hung out in the States together for that, until I went to India, I was like a kid tasting something sweet for the first time. And I just couldn't get enough of it. All I wanted was that sweet stuff that I was finally allowed to have a taste of. And what it was that I was feeling was this vast, this incredibly deep and open and vibrant, spacious presence that was so intimate and so huge at the same time. And this is what Ram Dass was transmitting. And this was Maharaji and Maharaji's presence. This is who he is. And so I was just drinking it in as much as I could. And that led me to go to India to be with him physically. But in those times, it was very difficult because Ram Dass was also conflicted, because Maharaji had told him when he was coming back to America after his first visit, Maharaji said, "Don't talk about me." But of course, all he could do was talk about him because it was like the
right.
one thing in his life that was like, so he, but he never said his name or where to find him. So he felt that he was following the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, but not the letter. So, but he was conflicted about all the love that was coming to him. And he kept trying to say, it's not me. So we wouldn't think it was him. But there was this kind of neurotic dance going on too, because he enjoyed the affection also. It was an interesting period for all of us.
Yeah,
but
it's one that I just am so intoxicated by this period of neurotic dance,
Yeah, oh yeah, it was very. I remember one time he was such a bastard to me once, and I wrote him about it. I said, "You're just a fucking asshole," and he writes back. He writes back, "Shiva's a cosmic asshole." Things like that were happening.
Yeah.
So it was like that. It was very intense and very beautiful, and ultimately, really, it was the hook. We were hooked, and we were being reeled in slowly by Maharaji that way.
I have one more Name That Voice for you, my friend, and then we'll come back.
By the way, those two great things. I've never met John McLaughlin, but I would love to someday.
You know what?
Like
I'll hook you up. I just hooked up Arjun with Pharaoh Sanders, by the way, so I can hook you up. No problem.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I've been shedding pretty hard here, so yeah, we'll come back. Take a listen. I just want to be also clear, Krishna Das. I mean, I talk much better than I write, so a lot of times it's hard to encapsulate per se what my show is about, but it's these spirits and my elders and these healers like yourself and 2,000 other cats, men and women. If my show is about one thing, this is it.
That no matter what happens world-wise with business or whatever, however you want to, say it or call it, what we are as people, what we are as humans, never really changes. I mean, we all have a heart. We all come from the spirit. I think what essence is always there, because it has to be there, because that's what we are. So, you know, when something comes along, like something beautiful or something energetic or something that's inspiring, it rekindles that natural essence that's in all of us. And that's why you see different things happen at different times, you know, because people are made of love. People are made of hope. And if there's an opportunity for something that shows up that illustrates that, then it plugs that energy into people again. You know, so even though things look dark, or even though things look manipulated and whatever you want to call it right now, there's a lot of terminology, you know. What we are is infinite. What we are is always there.
I'm not going to ask you to guess who that is, but his name is Ernie Watts. I don't know if he did the part Native American blood, played with Cannonball, and most notably,
sax player.
Absolutely, and he Chariots of Fire. He did that soundtrack. But I mean, this dude, that was Krishna Das. That story could hold up today. I did that in June of 2011. So, and it's only, I mean, I've been on this journey 9 years. And so I recognize that is what I'm trying to do, is ultimately inspire people to be themselves. And what we are is infinite. And I've been doing a lot of work, and I've been playing a lot of your audio clips to a lot of my guests, a lot of yogic divine priestesses too, because some of your stories are so compelling. And I played one for this wonderful divine spirit in Colombia, Durga Julia Sanchez, and her husband was Ram Giri. And I wonder if you could talk about, because she said that Ram Dass went into a kind of a supermarket somewhere in Europe, and Ram Giri was there. He was already very much ensconced in a similar spiritual path that you were in a different part of the world. But can you pay tribute to Ram Giri right now?
Oh yeah, Ram Giri. I didn't meet Ram Giri in India because he arrived he came to Maharaji after March 73, which is when Maharaji sent me home. So I did meet him later when we returned after Maharaji left the body. Ram Dass and I and others flew to India a few days after Maharaji died, after he disappeared. And I think I met Ram Giri then. But then later he came to the States with his other two German friends, Vishnu Digambar and Durga. So we very close friends, known them for many years. Ram Giri died last year with pancreatic cancer. And I had just visited him and Durga down in Florida a few months before that, I think. For the first time in many years, I saw him. We did a few programs together down in Miami some years ago. He was a wonderful guy, very, very, very deep and very present, and he did a lot of work on himself. And he had a beautiful, a beautiful death. I mean, he was very at ease, very open, very ready to go with whatever happened. It was really very inspiring.
I played Durga when I interviewed her, a clip from our first interview, and then she came out and said, "I know Ram Das." It blew. I mean, she goes, "I know Krishna Das." I couldn't believe, and then she started talking about Ram Giri, and there was this really cool story she told about. I mean, he was kind of in this nebulous place, but he was sitting in this, I don't know, like pantry or market pantry, and it was just crazy. Ram Dass comes in and stops at the table, and that all Ram Giri's been trying to do is searching for peace and connection and belonging. And the next thing you know, he's walking out of this market with with Ram Dass. You know, it's like a really. I mean, that's a simplistic view, but it's one of those things where you just send stuff out to the universe, and you hope that it will raise frequencies. And before I let you go, is there a way for you to talk about the Kali Yuga and how long it will last, and not about what's next, but this is the more important thing, Krishna Das, is that just like the Ernie Watts comment, I created something out of nothing. I didn't have any apparatus involved. I found my true nature. It took me a couple years to find my voice on the radio, but I didn't have any publicists calling people up. I've just been seeking and basically creating something out of nothing, using the spiritual, being a conduit, trying to stay out of my own way. And so the Kali Yuga in this time, is there a shelf life to it? And talk to people around the world about creating something with nothing.
Well, we don't have to create something with nothing because we already have everything we need.
Right.
And it's all within us all the time, whether this is Kali Yuga or not. It makes no difference in terms of turning within. The Kali Yuga represents outside world, but the inside world is always available to us fully, and it takes our effort and our motivation and our paying attention and following the longing of our hearts to be free in love. And the story about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, are we going to let the world destroy our hearts? And the answer is no. We are not going to let that happen. And we are going to find the teachings we need to make our hearts strong enough and supple enough and open enough to overcome any adversity. They also say that in this so-called Kali Yuga, these dark ages, that serious austerities are not required to find relief and release. That in this age, one needs to follow the longing of one's heart. And they say, so many of the saints have said that in this age, the repetition of the names of God, this is the way to find, is the easiest way to overcome adversity and to find one's true nature. And this is what Maharaji said to us all the time. He said, Ram Nam Karne Se Sab Pura Ho Jata Hai. From going on repeating these names, everything is accomplished. Everything is made full and complete. And he said, just do it. It doesn't matter if you have any feelings of love or feelings of devotion, or whether you're angry or sad or tired. Just do the practice. Do it. And it will open up your insides. It'll open you up inside. And then you'll know that you're on the right path. So it takes some effort on our part to overcome a lot of our programming, but it's also very possible and very imminent that we can find this place within us. And even in this, because sometimes in the darkest night, a little match is a big thing. One candle can do a lot.
You're damn right about
that. In the middle of the day, one candle doesn't do much, but when it's dark, one candle can be a big thing, and that's kind of the situation now. And as far as how long it's going to last, nobody who really knows talks about it.
But I mean, like based on what I mean, because I'm just middle class white boy. I don't really know when did we enter into this Kali Yuga and
how at the end of it? Some people say there's little bumps in the middle where it goes away for a little while and comes back. Who knows? I did. No, by the way, I'm just so glad you brought up the Dalai Lama again. I wanted to go back just for a minute. You said
the people said, "Are you happy?" And he goes, "Did he answer the question?" I just heard that he said he had a very difficult life.
Yeah, he said, the Chinese have taken everything from me. They've murdered, took my country, they've murdered my people. Am I going to let them take my happiness? And the answer is no. Of course I'm not going to let them take my happiness. So yes, he answered the question very clearly, that we do not have to let and allow what happens in the outside world to destroy our hearts. Our true nature is love. Our true nature is peace. Our true nature is happiness. And when we come into contact with that, the world cannot destroy that. And in fact, we can bring our essential goodness into the world and help people alleviate suffering. But that's what he said. No, I'm not going to let them take my happiness.
Let me leave you with this, because I will connect you with Mahavishnu John McLaughlin. In our third interview, he said to me, "Jake," at the end he said, "never forget this." He goes, I had a chance, I had the honor to play for the Dalai Lama. And he goes, and afterwards I received his blessing. And he said, Dalai Lama gave a little talk. And it's just so cool that you brought this up. He said, Dalai Lama said, "Most people think my religion is Buddhism. Wrong. My religion is happiness.
And kindness.
And kindness. And that is essentially my mission when I can clear out the dark corners of my heart. That's what I do. That's when I shine the most. And thank you, man, for your presence, man. It's it's always great to connect and ask Mark Egan about Dave Friesen, man. You guys are gonna have.
I will.
No, I'm telling you. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. So I did. Bless you and your family, and heart full of soul, man.
Thanks so much, man. Take good care.
All right, be good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We'll be back with Yashoda Devima in a half hour.
Hey!